What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Kick-Ass Podcast. I hope you had an awesome holiday season. I hope you had an even better new year. I hope everyone is good out there. As always, thank you so much for keeping the show in your feed and downloading the show wherever you do so. I truly appreciate it. We're not going to waste too much time. We're going to get into it. Today's probably going to be a little bit of a stacked show. And you guys know how long-winded I can be, and my side rants and things like that. So we're not going to waste too much time, like I said, but a couple things here really quick. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at ASHMANNS and the show at _. And also, about a week ago, I believe it was, or around that, jumped on the WWE podcast with Matt and did kind of like a year in review show with him. We broke down our favorite moments of the year, or the biggest news moments of the year, rather, which is what I will be doing here today, but kind of in a different format. Obviously, I won't be talking with anyone. It'll just be me, guys. Hopefully, maybe in the next few weeks here, I'll be reaching out to a couple people, see if we can get a few guest hosts on the show. So that should be fun. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But like I said, we are not going to waste too much time. But I do just want to, like I said, just shout out Matt, shout out the W Podcast. If you're not listening to him, I'm not sure why you're not. But definitely check out the show. You can literally get it anywhere you can listen to podcasts. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's an awesome time chatting with him. Long story short, he was one of the people, him and a couple of my friends back home in Virginia. Shout out you guys, you know who you are. But they helped me get my feet wet in the podcast world and just literally show me the odds and ends and how this thing even works. So I definitely learned a lot from him, and I will always appreciate that. So check that out if you are not already. But with that being said, guys, today's show is a review show. We will not be going in depth on everything because I would literally be here probably till next year. Like I said, with how much I tend to ramble on with some things, but I did my best. I narrowed it down to 5. It's probably not going to be anything surprising. It's probably going to be a very similar bunch of topics that you have most likely heard elsewhere. So that's, again, why I appreciate you guys for checking out the show here as well. But to me, and it sucks, like it's hard. I guess I could do a top 10, right? But then I don't know. To me, it doesn't really matter the number, because if you just extend it to 10, then it's like, oh, well, I still have like these honorable mentions over here. So it's just one of those things where I forced myself to kind of narrow it down. And the ordering, once I narrowed it down to 5, was kind of easy once I looked at it all on paper, literally. But I did want to mention a few side things before we get into the core 5 itself. And a few honorable mentions, I guess we'll say. And again, these honorable mentions are in no particular order, and I'm not going to spend too much time on them because they are just honorable mentions. And first, I guess I should say 2022 was probably the craziest year in professional wrestling. If you look at it as a whole, it's just, you could take any of these topics singularly, and literally that could probably be like the biggest talking point of that year, or at least one of them, right? And it's just insane when you sit down and look at a list of everything that's happened this year to just kind of wrap your head around everything. So that's, again, why I try to narrow it down to a smaller number, because I don't want to keep you guys here too long. But the first one I'm going to start off with is kind of maybe a little surprising, maybe just to even mention it, and maybe this is out of a place of bias in my part, so I'll be completely transparent on that. But it was Jeff Hardy being fired from WWE and joining AEW, and within about a month or so being arrested for DUI. I believe it was in Jacksonville, and we have really not seen him since. And I believe it was reported that he had pursued rehab, which was interesting because reportedly, and I believe he even mentioned and stated it himself, that WWE wanted him to go to rehab, and he said, fuck that, essentially. So, it sucks because, as you guys know, if you've listened to me in the past, Jeff Hardy was one of my favorites growing up, if not, like, definitely top 3 favorites. Depending on the year, probably my favorite, you know what I mean? So, it was really hard for me as a fan, to see him continue to battle those demons, and just as a human being, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here, obviously I don't know him, I wish I did, it'd be kind of cool. Did meet him once, which was a really cool night, but it's just one of those things where it obviously as a fan, it sucks, right? Because you want to see the Hardys as a tag team, especially in AEW, kind of go on maybe their last run and just see what that could have looked like and just see the different stories and the different matches that would have progressed and came about that. And it sucks for Matt, too, you know? Like, I feel for Matt. Obviously, the Hardy Boys as a tag team are a big and huge deal, and Matt has kind of been just on the sideline. You know, he's still doing things with Private Party right now, so at least he's still kind of on television on Rampage and Dark and things like that, but I don't know. And I mean, hey, look, and maybe he chose to kind of take this time to take a little bit of a lighter schedule as well, and I'm not knocking it one way or another. I'm just saying, I'm sure if he could or if he would have had an option in all this, which appeared to be the point with the whole Jeff coming to AEW thing to begin with, right? That the plan was to link up as a tag team, and that obviously can't happen when Jeff is going through some stuff that he's going through. And at the end of the day, any point of the day, wrestling doesn't matter. You know, we as fans don't matter. Jeff and his family matters. You know, Jeff the individual, Jeff as the father and husband and brother. You know, like he as a human being and his health is the number one priority. So I hope he's doing good. And it's kind of crazy, but to me, like thinking of him being in AEW just back in March feels like over a year ago. So that's why I completely almost left him off of the list, because like that wasn't even this year, was it? And damn sure it was. So, and I believe does have a court date coming up here soon. Not really sure how that works, or anything like that, if he is in rehab. So long story short, and again, it's obviously none of my business if he is in rehab. The whole point of that is I just hope he's good. You know, I hope whatever he's doing right now, I hope he's in a good place. I hope his family's in a good place. And of course, if things work out and he's able to come back to wrestling and it's a good idea for all parties involved, then it'd be cool to see him back. But again, I don't want to see him back if it means he's not in a good place. So long story short, all positivity and all good vibes to Jeff Hardy and his family, obviously, and hoping the best for him. Another wild thing that happened this year was back in January, beginning of 2022, when we got the return of Shane O'Mac in the Royal Rumble match. Again, that literally feels like it didn't happen this year. But who would have thought that was just the beginning of the McMahon family drama for 2022, and looking back on it, that was probably the least worrisome out of it all, and that was purely all wrestling related, which in hindsight is a relief. But yeah, the details from that were kind of crazy, thinking back on it and looking back on it kind of again with hindsight in 2020. The reports are saying that he pretty much wanted to go into the Royal Rumble match and just put himself over and just put himself in the best light possible, and he was just kind of getting too big of a head on himself, is kind of how it was described. Again, it's the wrestling world is just so crazy, right? Because it's like if you read one website, you'll see some stuff, and then another website will completely debunk it. So that was the predominant rumors that were circulating around that, and then apparently Vince McMahon had enough and fired or sent his own son home, at least, which is just it. The McMahon family, it's a movie, right? Like I always said and wish that there was some type of camera that was watching Vince, maybe not 24/7, but at least while backstage and just catching his movements in the locker room, what he does leading up to the show, and just shit like that, you know? And I mean, obviously, I'm sure when there were some family issues going on, cameras would not be there, but you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, it's just crazy to think that, first of all, that Shane was even in WWE in 2022 in the Royal Rumble match, because this year has just been mindfuck in a lot of ways. But how quickly he came back and how quickly he was sent home. And we haven't really heard much since, unless I missed something, which wouldn't really be surprising. But unless I missed some headline out there in the months since then, but I don't think so. Who knows what he's doing? I did see some things, not regarding him specifically, but his son was apparently doing really well in football, I believe it was, and maybe just committed to a college or something to that effect. So that's pretty cool, and hey, look, maybe dude, that's all he wants to do. Like maybe he's done being in wrestling. Maybe he's just focusing on his outside businesses and his just family, and I don't blame him. Dude's probably very financially set for the rest of his life, so I'm sure he doesn't even need to think about working. So I don't blame him if he's just wanting to focus on his family, but it is an interesting thought to kind of ponder whether, with Stephanie and Triple H being in charge now, and Nick Khan, of course, if that would be better or worse for Shane and hopes to possibly ever return. So yeah, I just think that would be a really interesting dynamic, and I haven't read anything to get any kind of inclination on what Shane and Stephanie's relationship is like, what Shane and Hunter's relationship is like. It'd be really intriguing to kind of get an idea and a glimpse into that. And man, like, I wish we could just, there was like a show, you know what I mean? Some type of reality show, just following them in their lives. Like, I would be fucking hooked. Probably good thing that it's not, because wrestling already consumes the majority of my outside life. But with that being said, we'll move on to just a quick shout out and something that's a little, very sad. Shout out to Big E, man. Big E back in March, I believe it was, broke his neck on an episode of SmackDown with Ridge Holland. It was, I forget what the exact move was. I think it was just like what was it? I don't remember the exact. I'm not going to sit here and try to make it up or bullshit you guys. But to think that, again, like any regular year, like that still would be a big deal and still be big news, and not that it's not a big deal, but a big talking point, right, is kind of what I mean in that regard, and just a main focal point of reports and clickbait shit that, a lot of websites go for, and it's kind of just taking a back seat, and that's kind of, that is the reason why I wrote it down here, and not that it was news or anything like that, but just, it's sad, and shout out Big E. Man, and it's crazy to think back to, and to think that the beginning of the year, he was the champion, you know what I mean? He was the WWE champion, and dude was going strong, and within a couple months, he ended up breaking his neck, and he's been out, and I think the last thing that I read regarding his recovery and how he's doing, essentially, was that it was still going to be a few months, maybe until March of now this year, fucking 2023, that he would even be able to get scans to see, like, how his neck is healing, and if he's going to need surgery or not. Could be a little off on that, but I'm pretty certain that's what it was, so don't quote me on that, guys. But yeah, to me, again, this is kind of what I was saying about Jeff Hardy. Wrestling, obviously, in this regard, in situations like this, takes a back seat, you know what I mean? And it really, yes, as a fan, you want to see them back selfishly because you love them as a character, but these are real human beings, and these are real dudes, and these are real people, and these are real lives that deserve to be lived outside of their careers, like wrestling, for us, in a lot of ways, wrestling is life, you know what I mean? But wrestling, no one thing should be your life. Like, life should be your life. So to me, like, the whole point of being that successful and really working hard at whatever your career is should be for your end goal to be able to retire and live life comfortably, and to be able to not have to work. And the number one thing, obviously, for Big E, and this is, completely different than the Jeff Hardy situation, physical injuries, completely different. So that's kind of where, obviously, the comparison stops. But with Big E, that's why it makes it even more sad, because dude literally broke his neck, and you just want nothing but the best for Big E, and especially when the dude just radiates positivity. It's not just a gimmick. Everyone that you hear from just has nothing but love and respect and just positive things to say about Big E and the real human being and the real man himself. So that's just another reason why it kind of sucks even more, because you don't want to see it happen to anyone, but especially when it happens to what appears to be such a great dude as him. So shout out Big E. I'm almost 100% certain he will never hear this shit, but if by whatever way he does, or just the vibes do reach him, I'm not too far from Tampa, but if they do reach him, man, just shout out you, man, and I hope you're living a somewhat normal life now, and you're just a little bit more comfortable than you were a couple months ago. So shout out to you, Big E. Next up we have, which is crazy again that it is an honorable mention, but Stone Cold Steve Austin returned to WrestleMania this year. It actually had a match, guys. And let me know if you guys think I'm absolutely crazy for having this type of moment in the honorable mentions. And I really debated on switching this out with my number 5. I even still have it, my number 5 slashed with Stone Cold at WrestleMania. But I had to go with this as an honorable mention just because of what we'll get into my number 5 obviously in a minute, but long story short, I never thought we would see Stone Cold Steve Austin back in the ring. I would have said that you're crazy if someone would have told me around, or just last year even, that Stone Cold would be back in the ring, and not even, obviously not in the ring, but this dude had a fucking false, was it a false count anywhere? They literally just went over the entire arena. He took a backdrop onto the concrete floor, against Kevin Owens, I should say, pronouns pal, but it's just wild to think that this is another moment that happened in 2022, and it's still like, oh yeah, and by the way, Stone Cold Steve Austin had a match this year. And apparently I haven't seen the actual photos or videos, but he's apparently in insane shape, and he's been posting stuff on Instagram. So if you guys are super active on Instagram, check that out. I'm trying to become more engaged in 2023. So there's that. But yeah, just fucking Stone Cold came back, guys, and it'll be really interesting to see now with Triple H in charge how WrestleMania comes to look this year with Stone Cold, because he said that he felt great after his match last year. So we'll see. But it's wild to think that Stone Cold was in a match. And now to think back too that is definitely, I can hopefully confidently say that was the last time we will ever see Vince McMahon and Stone Cold Steve Austin in a ring, and see Vince take that incredibly bad and awful looking stunner. So yeah, and Pat McAfee got his moment, which is super cool. Fucking love Pat, so shout out to Pat. Shout out to Pat. But yeah, it's wild to think and to look back on this year and to say, oh yeah, by the way, Stone Cold had a match this year. So shout out to Stone Cold, man. Shout out to him, and again, super happy and just thankful for him that he was able to come back and that he gave us what he gave us. Dude obviously doesn't need to come back, doesn't need the money, but still has a passion for it. And to see him still out there grinding and staying in good shape, it's just encouraging to see, and really intriguing to see just now how the landscape has changed going into WrestleMania season. Like I said earlier, to see what that means for Stone Cold going forward. Last honorable mention that I have here, guys, and then we will get into the official top 5. I think I kind of cheated here. But is MJF. I have MJF walking out, but MJF as a whole, I think, and my list here obviously isn't storyline and character based. It's kind of just wrestling news as a whole for the year, but that was kind of a twofold, and kind of why I think I may have cheated, but why I put MJF down is specifically on my notes here. I have MJF walking out, but that, to me, I still think started off as a real thing, and that was, of course, during Double or Nothing weekend, and there was speculation and wonder if he was even going to be at the match and be physically there and present for Wardlow's match. For me, I don't think that was. And again, look, not that I have any inside scoop, right, which I did, but my personal speculation is I think it started out real, and they worked something out, they being MJF and Tony Khan, and whatever that was, they came to an agreement, and MJF is back, and I think it was worked out before he cut that incredible promo on Tony Khan and called him a fucking mark on Dynamite, which is tremendous. And yeah, to me it sucks, and the reason why I don't think it started off just as a wrestling storyline is because of the ramifications for Wardlow. Dude was so fucking hot going into that storyline with MJF and to going into Double or Nothing weekend, and that match was supposed to be pretty much just like the catapult for him and his career, and it just really wasn't. Yeah, he got the pretty much squash victory, and he hit MJF with, I believe it was 10 power bombs, but he wasn't the focus. He wasn't the focal point. He wasn't the talking point coming out of it, and it sucks, and it's sad, and I feel for the dude because he, in my opinion, just kind of hasn't been the same since, and that's no fault of his. I think things just unfortunately shifted, and it sucks, and I hope that Wardlow can kind of get back on track. Obviously, MJF is the heavyweight champion now for AEW, so he's, kind of perfectly fine in a lot of regards, but yeah, man, we'll see what that means for Wardlow going forward. But MJF, the walkout aside, I think he had a phenomenal year, and I think this is just the beginning. And the one good thing about, well, not the one good thing, but another good thing about this being 2023 is that we are that much closer to 2024 in the bidding war that is among us. So I am so fucking intrigued to see what that means and to see what January of 2024 actually ends up being, and if it's any indication of what last year was, things will probably just continue to get even more crazy by that point. So shout out MJF, man, and he is wrestling in a lot of ways for AEW. He is the star of the promotion. He is, and it sucks, because you can, all right. So in a lot of ways, he's the future, but he is the present, in my opinion, too. He is, for me, he's one of the main things, if not the main thing, that I look forward to seeing on AEW, and to seeing what stories he tells and what direction he goes in, and he's just really compelling. I think is the best way I can sum it up and kind of describe him as. He's just really compelling. And that's not a knock on anyone else or anything like that. But it's just, he really draws me in, man. And there's just something about him that's just really captivating as well. Like, I don't know. And well, I guess I could probably talk it out. But that's not the point of the pod here today. But I think this is just the beginning. But I think it was really smart of Tony Khan to do whatever he needed to do to keep MJF happy, at least for now. We'll see, like I said, what happens next year. But this is this year. This is the beginning of 2023. MJF is our AEW champion. He is the devil. He pretty much stated that you're going to have to pry that championship that he got newly redone and the Burberry background and all that shit on the strap. You're going to have to pry that championship away from him. And I really think that he's probably going to go a full year. And that's why it's so intriguing to see what 2024 ends up being for MJF and AEW for that matter. But with MJF out of the way, we will officially get to the top 5 moments of 2022, at least in my brain here and according to the Kakash podcast. Let me know what you guys think of the picks that I have. Once you guys listen to the show, and let me know how crazy you guys think I am for not having Stone Cold in the top 5, or if you think he was slotted in the right spot. But number 5, I have, and this was the one that I was referring to earlier with kind of debating on if I should swap them out, but was the purchase of Ring of Honor by Tony Khan and the way it has been integrated into the world of AEW. When we first heard and Tony Khan first announced back in March of this year that he purchased Ring of Honor, I was really excited. Well, let me stop there. I'm not going to say that. That's a lie. I was really happy for that matter because I assumed he was purchasing for instance, like the video library, the rights, and the bulk and pretty much just the visual and what we as fans want of Ring of Honor, and having that as a library and having that in your back pocket for whatever you want. So if you have a streaming service, for instance, for an AEW, you can have that incorporated as well and kind of build some depth there. Never did I expect him to really run it as an additional promotion, and I'm still kind of iffy on it, I think in a lot of ways with him not getting a TV deal for Ring of Honor right now, that was probably a blow to him, and a little bit of, I don't want to say crushing, but it was probably a blow is the proper way to put it. And he did state at I forget which press conference it was at. I'm blanking right now on the pay-per-view name. Was it Full Gear? I believe it was Full Gear. Yeah, it had to be Full Gear. At the Full Gear press conference that the way you will be able to watch Ring of Honor will be through the Honor Club subscription, which would be $10, well, $9.99 a month. And I believe you'll get the Ring of Honor pay-per-views about 90 days after they air. So if one airs today, you'll get it 90 days from today on the Honor Club subscription. And of course, you'll have access to the back library and things of that nature. But yeah, to me, and I'm not going to sit here and beat a dead horse, but and that phrase may be used here quite often, especially when we get to a couple other topics here specifically, but the way that it's kind of taken over the AEW shows, especially Dynamite, I think was kind of a counter effect and maybe counterproductive rather to what Tony Khan was going for. I get the idea, and I think he was, again, smart for putting the title on Jericho. That would have been your best bet to get the best deal that you could, and it's just not in the cards right now. And that's not to say, look, after a year of Ring of Honor being on Honor Club, things can't change, and he can maybe eventually get a TV deal or some other type of distribution deal for Ring of Honor, but right now it's just not in the cards, and that's okay, you know, like that's not, I don't know. I don't know why a lot of people view that as a negative thing. I mean, ideally, for your distribution purposes, you want the best deal possible. And if he could have gotten a TV deal, then fuck yeah, get the TV deal. But he didn't, and that's okay, you know? Like, I personally am not going to be subscribing to Honor Club because I cut cable because I was tired of paying a stupid amount of money for TV and for just shit that, you know, occupies my brain in ways that and rightfully so, whatever, but I allow, I should finish up there, but it's just something else to add to the plate, and I'm just not going to right now. Look, I appreciate the idea behind it, but I am not going to dish out another $9.99 on top of all the other $9.99, $7.99, $10.99, and all the other shit that I pay for, that I probably end up paying more for now outside of cable than I did originally. But, and that's not Tony Khan's fault, that's my fault, for the record. But my point with that is just, there's just too much programming right now for wrestling in general, and even AEW alone. We have Dynamite, we have Rampage, we have Dark Elevation, that ideally he would want us to be paying attention to, so you take that, and then you take whatever Ring of Honor is going to be doing, and we don't, I believe, have an exact idea of what the scheduling is going to look like, but I did find it interesting at the press conference, and then we'll wrap it up here, that he was asked by someone if Ring of Honor essentially was going to have their own separate and dedicated roster, and he didn't really give a straight answer on that, so I'm really intrigued to see what that means going forward, but I hope now that, since we do have an answer on what Ring of Honor is going to be doing kind of going forward, that means we'll see less of it on AEW, and we can actually focus on AEW, and I think we will. I think signs in the past few weeks here are kind of pointing in that direction, so I'm not really too stressed out about it. It's nowhere near like it was a couple months ago, but yeah, I'm still not going to peg the purchase of Ring of Honor as a negative or a thumbs down or anything like that, but I would have been in the ballpark and the voting side of, yeah, purchase it, but just buy the rights, the video packages, the video library, all that shit. And because when you think about it, the main thing that would have been super enticing and probably just salivating for him would have been the all-in footage and the footage for the Young Bucks and at the time CM Punk and all of your core wrestlers. You have a lot of footage to reference and that we have started to see, you know, video package put together and clips from. So that's why I think it was a good idea in that regard, or a really good idea for that matter. Just maybe not as a standalone promotion. Number 4 in the wrestling news for 2022, we have a little bit of breaking news now as well. We have an update from Sasha Banks, but officially number 4 was Sasha Banks and Naomi walking out, and essentially possibly trying to quit WWE, but definitely walking out from WWE and relinquishing the titles back, of course, when Vince McMahon was still in power. And again, I'm not going to sit here and go over play-by-play for what happened here, but long story short, we don't really know in a lot of ways. essentially what the breaking point was, but we have an idea that it was just the creative direction. They weren't happy with being put in singles matches, and I think both taking the loss to, I forget who it was, I believe it was maybe Ronda Rousey, and I forget the other, who Naomi's opponent was going to be, but they, of course, were the tag team champions, and they didn't feel like, and this is, again, what was reported that we've heard so far, they didn't essentially like that direction, even though that would have meant a pay-per-view match, I believe, for both of them in singles competition, so if that is the case, and again, it was probably an accumulation of things as well, but they both put the titles on the desk of John Laurinaitis, again, back when they both were still there. Thank God he's gone. And they haven't been back since, and we have heard very limited things from them since. Obviously nothing specifically related to what happened, but that was until tonight. We did get a little bit of an update from Sasha Banks herself. She took to Twitter about, I'm not sure how long ago, what time is it now? A few hours ago. And she kind of went on a little thank you spree. And this is on Twitter, at Mercedes Varnado, of course, her real name. She started off by saying, and she tagged all these following individuals. She started off by saying, thank you at WWE, thank you at Real King Regal, which was William Regal, thank you Triple H, thank you WWE Universe, thank you, hashtag crew, Krew. I guess that's maybe what her fan base, or what she calls her fan base, or what they call themselves. Not really sure, or maybe someone, I don't know, maybe a group backstage, I don't know, but whoever the crew is, she shouts you guys out, and she loves you so much, literally. Thank you, hashtag crew, I love you so much. She continues saying, thank you at Vince McMahon, which is interesting. And finally, thank you, hashtag Sasha Banks with a blue heart, which, of course, blue is her color. That is pretty interesting. She, of course, reportedly has already touched down in Japan to make her upcoming appearance at Wrestle Kingdom, which is approaching us, and I'm very, very, very much contemplating on seeing if I can watch that live. Wrestle Kingdom it is, just because I'm really, really fucking intrigued. And there's a lot going on, and I really want, like I've been saying, really want to make it a point to watch New Japan more and just really open up my wrestling palette. So that's on my list this year. But a lot of what, well, not a lot, but something that also gets kind of put to the backside and not as much spotlight is Naomi. And I said this with Matt. We didn't have as much time to get into it, but I started talking about it with Matt that I feel like Naomi kind of took a backseat to all this. And it sucks, you know. Of course, I mean, Sasha is the bigger star, and I think anyone would admit that, and that's no slight on Naomi. It is what it is. And in life, there's people who are more famous than you, or just at a, not a different level, but just in a different spot than you, and that's just, you know, that's life. That's not a bad thing. Like, that's just, it is what it is. But yeah, so with Naomi, I think it's probably, if I had to make an official pick, I would say Sasha Banks, now Mercedes Varnado. I think Mercedes is probably, and I would lean more towards the side of she's gonna probably do her thing for the next year, 2 years, 3 years. As she should. Like, if I were her, like, first that'd be fucking dope. But if I were her, like, and I had the option in my contract was officially up today, and I had the option to literally do whatever the fuck I wanted to do, why wouldn't I? Like, why wouldn't you? This girl, she's what, 31? Like, she's literally, like, barely hitting the peak of her career. She's done so much shit outside of WWE. She was in The Mandalorian. People know who she is, and she's just at the beginning of building her name outside as a star. And I'm not gonna say I don't think. She doesn't need WWE as much as WWE probably needs her at this point, especially for the women's division, just to kind of give it that extra spark. But if she truly is gone and she's gonna do her own thing, first of all, I'm fucking happy for her, but WWE is gonna take a little bit of an L on this one. I'm not gonna say they're gonna be hurt or anything like that, but it could potentially hurt them in different ways than what you would normally think, or what may be the most obvious. But I kind of hope, and this may sound weird, but I hope she is gone from WWE. I hope she is. She did either quit or just choose not to renew, or they were able to work out. Whatever happened, if she's free, I'm happy for her, and I'm really, really excited to see what she does. I hope she is going to be at Wrestle Kingdom. I hope she does. I hope she lives it up. She's been training in Mexico. She's obviously in Japan. Well, it's not confirmed, but heavily speculated that she did touch down in Japan a couple days ago. So yeah, like, she's living her life, and I'm fucking happy for her. And regarding Naomi, I think she would be more likely to go back to WWE, just because my understanding, at least, don't obviously want to put a false narrative out there, but maybe it would be a little bit more, or a little bit easier for her to come back. Maybe she didn't have as many back and forths with management, and maybe, or just disgruntledness as Sasha did. You know, Sasha had a lot of baggage going on, and just different things that both parties didn't see eye to eye on, maybe a little bit more than Naomi, Trinity Fatu did. So, and obviously her husband's still there. I mean, look, I know Sasha Banks' Mercedes husband is on the WWE crew as well. He's their, one of their designers for their ring gear. So, but I mean, man, like, Naomi's family is really, really built in there, the fucking bloodline, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see Naomi back. But then again, too, as I'm saying all this, I wouldn't be surprised to see Mercedes do her own thing, go to Japan for a couple weeks, and then not debut, but make a surprise appearance in the Royal Rumble, which is the end of January. So there's a lot that can happen, and this is literally just the beginning. But it's, again, if this was a normal year, this would still be probably the biggest news, or not the biggest news, but maybe top two, but it's not. So we will move on to number 3. Number 3, I am still kind of surprised, and still just really think that it's not real. But number 3, and to say the least for what's coming out later, but number 3, that's Cody Rhodes leaving AEW and returning to WWE, and at WrestleMania nonetheless. If you would have told me a year ago, going into 2022, one of the EVPs was going to be gone from AEW and making their surprise return or debut at WrestleMania, I would have been like, what the fuck is happening and what's wrong? And that was Cody Rhodes. And again, like, the reason I thought this couldn't possibly be happening was that Cody was, in my opinion, the heart of AEW. He was the machine. He was the engine, maybe. He was what kept that thing, I don't want to say kept it going in that regard, but he was what was powering it forward. He was, it just, I don't want to say, I don't know, just, there's a lot of cliches that came to mind, that's why it kind of tickled me, but, he was just like the heartbeat of it, man. And in my opinion, look, I don't obviously know the backstage happenings. I don't want to discredit anyone else's work, but when you would, for instance, like, if you turned on YouTube, right, and you were just looking up like AEW interviews, Cody was always out there. He was probably, and a lot of times, the first person out there promoting AEW, doing community events. Like, I saw so many fucking advertisements from him. This dude, every post that seemed like on Twitter and Instagram was fucking about a community event. And even when he started having a whole character issue with, well, not a character issue rather, but when he was going through his little metamorphosis of, is he a good guy, is he a bad guy, what's going on with him, and the reaction from the fans, which was just so intriguing to see in person. But when he was going through all that, he literally gave over his Twitter account, which I believe at that point had over 1 million followers, and they changed it into the AEW community events page. So that way, all the followers that were already built into that account, anything that they posted and were promoting, they were going to go directly to that fan base and to that following. So it's just one of the things. Then he started, what is the name of the group? But it's essentially for disabled kids or anybody who has hearing issues and things of that nature. And I forget the name. It was really cool. They would have specific like headphones and stuff that they would provide at the different Dynamite tapings, and I forget the name of it, but he was just the face of that, man. And then, of course, what he would do for the different pet charities, and especially when they would go to Chicago, because, if you guys know Cody, you guys know Pharaoh, his dog. So they would do different, like, sponsors and different charity events for adoptions and things like that. So it was just really cool to see him really putting AEW on his back and just really putting the name and the brand of AEW out there in the spotlight. That stemmed to him getting his own reality show, Rhodes to the Top. That was a kind of behind-the-scenes look at following him, Brandy Rhodes, their life, a little bit of behind-the-scenes for AEW. It showed us who his friends are, right? We learned the relationship between him and Ricky Starks, him and QT Marshall, his bus. It was an inside look at Cody Rhodes, and I don't know if it was to Mimi or Matt at the time, but this was obviously back when Road to the Top had just began. It was probably Mimi thinking back on it. But shout out Mimi. I hope you're doing well, girl. But I was like, man, like him and Brandy Rhodes, they just screamed Triple H and Stephanie to me. They're just like the equivalent. And it was just, to me, it was kind of tickling because he was going out there and destroying the throne with the sledgehammer, and the beginning for his entrance theme, which ironically he carried over into WWE, states wrestling has more than one royal family, and that obviously can mean a lot of different things, but it's, can take a clear shot at, or a clear guess at to the direction of it. But it's really still fascinating to me to not go on too much of a Cody Rhodes tangent here, but it's really fascinating and quite telling to see an EVP go from starting the year off in AEW in the EVP position, battling Sammy Guevara, going through this character shift and kind of character discovery, or maybe it was all just a mindfuck, to within a few months being done from AEW, being gone, him and Brandy obviously for that matter. We still don't really know what happened. It was just something personal that they couldn't get over, and Cody Rhodes stated that they'll never discuss it, which, hey, if it's personal, then it's none of our business. It would be really interesting to find out what it was, but hey, if it was something personal and wasn't like a contract dispute, character, direction, anything like that, then whatever, it's most likely none of our business. Like a lot of things aren't. But yeah, like I said, to think that I can't want to say debut, but in a lot of ways he did debut this version of himself, but he returned at WrestleMania, had a kick-ass feud with Seth Rollins, tore his pec, just that fucking gruesome and brutal visual of just his arm, just pretty much just like on fire from the inside. I'll never forget where I was. Shouldn't say this. I was driving from Virginia back here to Florida, and I had it on in the car, and I was in the Starbucks drive-thru, and I was like, what is everyone talking about? I'd seen it on Twitter, and I got a couple messages like, what the fuck, man? So I turned it on, and I skipped right to that match to see what was happening, and I'll never forget just the chills when he took off his robe and just the hushed silence that came over the Chicago crowd. And I'll remember it being Chicago because Chicago's always loud, and they were just silent for the first, like, maybe 5 minutes of the match, just because they were in awe of what they were seeing. And it was just, if you didn't see the visual, if you're new to this or you just get the pay-per-view, you have to see that. And the match itself was just so great. Just the emotion behind it, the story behind it. Everything he did and just looking at him made you cringe, so you were that much more invested in the match. And of course, that led to him having to take a few, it's probably going to be close to 6-7 months before he makes his return in totality. We're towards the end of it now, and heavy speculation he'll be back at the Rumble to start our WrestleMania season, which again is going to be super fucking exciting to see what direction everything goes in, especially with Triple H in charge now. But I'm very, very happy Cody Rhodes is back. He made it clear and stated in his return promo on Raw that his goal is to win the WWE Championship, the thing that eluded his father, Dusty Rhodes. So, again, that's why I'm conflicted with what happens between now and WrestleMania, between him and Roman. And we're not going to get into that now because I'll be here another 45 minutes with you guys. But, yeah, it's just there's so much to look forward to and so much to be excited for. And I'm in the ballpark. I'm very happy he's in WWE. He just feels like he fits, but I'm still fucking shocked that he is not in AEW anymore. And I think they are still feeling it. I think it was a big hit to them, whether it's obvious or not, or maybe apparent to some fans or not. But to me, it is, and maybe that's again just being biased. But I don't know. I think it was a huge loss for AEW and a big gain for WWE as well. Number two. And when you want to talk about beating a dead horse, it is these next two topics, which at this point, guys, it's very, very obvious what it is. Number two is the Punk Elite Brawl Out after All Out this year, back in September, which again, in a lot of ways feels like a lifetime ago. In a lot of ways, it feels like it just happened. I'm not going to go through again the play-by-play. If you guys are listening to this, you guys are pretty much diehard wrestling fans, so you obviously know what happened. Doesn't take away from the drama and the excitement of it, for better or for worse, with Punk just going on a fucking tirade with after winning the AEW championship in Chicago. MJF had made his return. We were getting ready to have just this fucking just beautiful story being told, and just the battle that they would have had in the culmination of what most likely would have been MJF beating CM Punk for the championship. I was just so very much looking forward to that story, as we all were, and to see it come crashing down is very sad in retrospect, and to see everything else that we most likely would not be getting because of what happened. But also with Tony Khan literally sitting, and Tony Khan being the, obviously if you've read a press release, the owner, founder, head writer, president, everything of AEW, and rightfully so, just sitting right beside Punk, and it's just still baffling to me. And the visual of him just eating a fucking muffin, man, with just, like, his hair just fucking sweaty. Obviously, he had blood all over him still. Well, not all over him, but he still had blood on him. The towel there, just eating a fucking muffin, drinking his seltzer water, whatever it was. Just shitting on Colt Cabana, shitting on Cabana's mom, saying that they still have a joint bank account, which, again, like I said at the time, could be for multiple reasons. I'm a big Punk fan, but come on, bro. And again, I don't know the story to that, but it's like that. I don't know. For the record, I don't share a bank account with anyone for that matter. But especially not my mother. It's just to go there. It was something else. And again, with Tony Khan, your boss, sitting literally in elbow space beside you. It's something else, and something that I will never forget as a wrestling fan. And to think of what happened later on, at one point during Punk's little tirade, he said that, quote, like, well, I'm not going to quote, but essentially that he's still the same guy that's going to walk up and down the halls in the locker room stating, if you want some, come get some, something to that effect. And the Elite did. They said, fuck this shit, bro, we're done. If rumor and reports are to be believed, and they approached or kicked down CM Punk's door, and they may or may not have blasted Larry the Dog in the face with said door. And after that, all hell broke loose. Kenny Omega may or may not have gotten bit in the arm by not Larry the Dog, but by Ace Steel, CM Punk's best friend. And it's just so fucking funny because you can believe either Kenny Omega got blasted, or Kenny Omega got bit by Ace Steel, or Kenny Omega just made his way in calmly, grabbed Larry the Dog, scooped him up, and rushed him out of the door, and out of the room, and saved him. Meanwhile, we have Ace Steel's wife supposedly just chilling in the corner there, and that's why Ace Steel was so pissed off, because them busting through the door and may or may not and have smacked Larry the Dog in the face. That startled the wife and startled Ace Steel, and of course pissed CM Punk off. It's just, and again, all hell broke loose. It's one of those things where we'll probably never really know what happened, even though, as I say that, we probably will. With the guys involved, we probably will find out what happened eventually. It's not surprising to me, I should say, rather, that the Elite are back and CM Punk is not. First of all, Punk had an injury, I believe it was a torn bicep, so we wouldn't have seen him right now anyway, but we are getting a little bit more nuggets dropped in and a little bit more clues that maybe Punk would be open to returning. I still am in the ballpark. I am truly a never say never person. I think that there's just as a possibility that CM Punk could return to AEW as CM Punk could debut. I don't know why I keep saying debut. He could return to WWE. Not saying that could be this year, but whenever everything is contractually wrapped up with AEW. So I am never going to rule anything out. If I had to put money on it, I would probably say I'd be more likely to put down he would return to AEW quicker than he would go back to WWE right now. But I could see him doing that just to go back and finish up his contract and then maybe not renewing, however long that may be. But yeah, that's just me kind of spitballing. But it's still to think back on the Brawl out and to just think of the shit that he said, that how he works with fucking children and he works with EVPs that couldn't manage a target, and it's just wild to think about, and it's sad to think about the ramifications that happen afterwards. How we go from having 4 new champions crowned at All Out, that being the trios champions with the Elite, and CM Punk being your new champion, to all of them being stripped within a week. So it's sad, you know what I mean? It created a clusterfuck with Mox. He's now a 3-time champion, and that surely, most likely, wasn't the plan. But shout out Mox. If anyone was the MVP for AEW in 2022, it was probably that dude. So shout out to him, and shout out to the positive changes he's made in his life as well. And fucking shout out Renee Paquette for finally being on the AEW roster and being part of the AEW crew. It's great to see her on TV, but yeah, guys, the Brawl Out was, and again, if this was a normal year, most definitely would have been the number 1 news item of the year. But it's not. This was a fucking crazy year. The number 1 news item, to me, of 2022 in the wrestling world, of course, is Vince McMahon stepping down as chairman. Well, not chairman, as the head of WWE, as head of creative, as pretty much the face of WWE and what we know the company to be. There's never been a time that WWE has existed where Vince has not been involved in every second, every millisecond of the day-to-day happenings of that company, and he's not now. Who the fuck knows what he's doing? I saw a paparazzi shot of him maybe 3 weeks ago out at some restaurant eating dinner with some lady. So maybe he's actually being a normal human being. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. You know, and again, I'm not going to get into the scandals and everything like that. It's, at this point, again, if you're listening to this podcast, you know why Vince is no longer in power and in charge. He still is the official owner of WWE and still has buying and controlling power of stocks and things like that. I believe it's the exact, or I believe not the exact, but from my understanding is that he owns about 40% of the shares, but that 40% equates to 80% of the voting power for WWE as a business, which, fucking brilliant. Just brilliant businessman. Well, in a lot of ways, in some ways not, because you have to report your spendings. But especially when you're spending millions and millions of dollars, but I digress. I still never thought Vince would be alive and step down. I never thought we would see the day. I think, like a lot of people thought, he would die in the chair, you know, as morbid and as crass as that sounds. There's really no other way to put it, you know? And it's sad that it went down the way that it did, just in the respect for the potential victims, and most likely victims. Of course, it's still alleged at this point, but, I mean, it's pretty obvious, and, you know, it's pretty certain in my opinion. But again, it's just an opinion, and we don't know for certain. There's still a lot of information we don't know, but, and, you know, for that matter, the news and the rumors that have been swirling within the past couple of weeks were that he was upset and that he stated that he thinks that he received bad legal advice for stepping down and all that shit. But to me, it was time. Obviously, he was fucking, 77 years old? Like, come on. If this was a completely normal situation and none of the bad shit had happened, and there's no victims involved and things like that, and this was just a completely normal dude, he was doing everything right, never did any of those horrible things, allegedly, it would be different, like, it would be, yeah, like, you're still 77 years old, though, bro, like, it's just time, like, showrunners get swapped out sometimes yearly, sometimes every season, and that's just normal. It doesn't mean you're bad at your job, but sometimes it does, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad at your job. It's just time to fucking move on. It's time to get new life into the show, and if you want to keep it healthy and successful, you need to move on, and he was never going to, and look, karma is a bitch, and things happen, and if what was reported against him is true, then he got what was deserved and not as much as he should have, if those allegations are true. And if not, then again, karma's a bitch, so things happen for a reason, but I mean, I don't know. It's again one of those sticky situations, and everything is still allegedly, but it's, I don't know. Getting to the wrestling part of it, I super fucking happy, obviously, as we all are, with him stepping down, because that means that Triple H has stepped up. And we have a new creative direction for WWE going into 2023, which is one of the most exciting things about the wrestling landscape. Starting this year off is we officially will get a full year, and we're going into a brand new year, a new start for Triple H, WrestleMania season with Triple H. He's going to have just his lineup, his draft, his talent, I mean, I'm sure there's people in AEW and other promotions that he would love to snatch if he could that are still under contract, but it's going to be cool to see what a road to WrestleMania looks like under Triple H, what WrestleMania itself looks like under Triple H, and to think that this man was on death's door a few months ago, half a year ago, and now he's running the company, essentially, with Stephanie McMahon, who's co-owner, or co-CEO, rather, with Nick Khan, and shout out to Stephanie. How can you just look over this? She had officially stepped away back in March, I believe it was, April. She stated that she needed to take some time away to just be with her family. That was after everything had gone on with Triple H, and then within a couple weeks, I believe it was 2 weeks, Triple H had said they were driving on vacation to, like, a vacation house or something, and Stephanie, they got the call that Vince was stepping down, and they asked her if she could show up, and they had to cancel their plans and rearrange some shit and go in. So, money, you can be a millionaire, a billionaire, and that's great, and that does definitely take care of a lot of problems that would relieve a lot of us, but it also creates a lot of new problems and problems that we don't have, that we don't understand and we don't deal with, and to me, and I think I'm kind of learning this a lot more as I get older. But money is fucking great, and I say this, and I work 2 jobs because I want to be able to save up even more. I want to be able to, my idea is to work as much as I can now, so when I do get older, I can do nothing with my family, and I can do everything with my family, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the dream, right? To work hard so you can live comfortably later on, and it sucks because they have millions and millions of dollars and don't probably need to work another day in their life, but with the positions that they have, they do. And again, not saying that they should stop working because they have money or anything like that. And they're not old. I think Triple H is in his maybe early 50s or something like that, and Stephanie may be in like her late 40s or some shit, maybe early 50s herself, I'm not sure. So they still got a good 10, 15, 20 years themselves, and especially in that role, or in those roles rather, but man, you can't even take a break, you can't even take a vacation, after dude almost like just went through all this horrible shit, and hopefully they will, right? Maybe after WrestleMania season this year, maybe after April, May, maybe they can take, like, maybe for instance, like the summertime, maybe June, they can take some time off. So I say that just because mental health is a real thing, and burnout is a real thing, and the shit that Triple H went through is a real obvious thing, and I don't need to sit here and tell anyone that, and especially them, but it's just crazy to think again how much has changed this year, and how the dynamics have in the landscape of wrestling has changed. But with that being said, guys, we have finally made it through the list. Thank you guys so much for listening all the way through. Let me know what you guys think on Twitter at ASHMANNS and on the show's Twitter page at kickasspodcast_. You can also check it out on YouTube. We don't have a visual for this episode, but hopefully in the near future we'll get back on that. Again, thank you guys so much. Have a great night and be safe.